Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Coco from High Street, and I want to welcome you to Church Online. Our mission at High Street is to love God, serve people, and reach the world. We hope you enjoy today's content.
And the people of Colossae, the people that Paul is writing this letter to, have this allegiance to both Rome and God, and it's kind of at battle within themselves. So when Paul writes this letter, he's kind of speaking to their Romanness, but also trying to let them know, like, listen, I think if you just fully understood the power of God, if you fully understood what he's done in your heart if you're a believer, then there would be no close allegiance. It wouldn't be Rome and Christ. It wouldn't be Christ and Rome. It wouldn't be anything. It would be Christ and everything else. The Empire of Rome promised three things. They're going to be on the screen for you, but the first is provision. They were big. They had power. Like I said, they covered 1,500 years of power. Like, United States isn't even 300 years old, and we're like, man, this is pretty good. Like, we've done pretty well for ourselves. 1,500 years they were in power. They eclipsed most of modern Europe from the UK all the way to India. I mean, their power was massive. And they had this kind of promise. They were really strong in propaganda of showing you that, like, hey, we are the way. They would have songwriters write songs about who they were. They would have artists draw and paint things about how great Rome was, so that you'd be walking around and you go, man, Rome must be really great. They had these songs that they would write and say that, like, Rome, once a city was conquered by Rome, became a Roman city, well, then the crops started to grow again. We have growth, provision like we've never had before. But probably the number one thing that defined Rome during this season was the Roman series of roads, that they had a system of roads that had never been seen before. Nothing like it. The way that they're paved, the way that they organize them. There are bridges that are still intact today. I can't put up a fence post that'll stay, but they can put up bridges that will last for 2,000 years. Unbelievable. I mean, to take someone that, I mean, you're dealing with like carts and trying to get horses through, and you just can't, to like, yeah, you hop on the Roman road, you can be anywhere you want. I mean, really the only equivalent modern day is like no internet to internet. I mean, a massive change where they really did shrink the world of their time, where it really paid to be a Roman citizen. It paid to be someone who was in with the Roman government, that they promise their people provision. The second thing that you see is peace. They had the Latin word pax almost everywhere. They had songs written about pax. That's the Latin word for peace, that they said, hey, there's two ways of living if you're gonna be near Rome. You can either live and be on the outskirts, and we can promise you there won't be peace for very long, because we'll come and we'll conquer your city, and we will do it by force, and we'll do it in a violent way that there won't be much left of what you have. Or you can come willingly, that we'll just bring you in, we'll have you pay taxes, and you can be a Roman citizen, and you can be involved in what is honestly kind of crazy, of like a long series of peaceful time for them. Outside of the empire, not much peace. Inside the empire, they promised a decent amount of peace, and they tried to show their people that. The third thing that you see is procedure. They promised their people procedure. And what that word really means is justice. And that kind of goes hand in hand with peace, right? That we see that in culture right now. If you don't have justice, there won't be peace. That you will cry out in any way that you can because of an injustice. Well, they had such a complicated and honestly like a well-oiled machine for their system of justice that people loved it. It worked across the span of their power, across the breadth of their power. That really what they argued for was this judgment of action and not intent. So if I went to go harm you and I hurt someone, they would say, listen, I can have an eyewitness for what Jared did, but I can't determine what his heart did. They didn't have things like hate crimes. They would just say, listen, we saw you hurt that person. This is the crime that you will have committed. I was listening to one commentary on this, and it talked about how one of the clearest ones was for a father that he could have an inheritance. And if he chose to put none of his children in his will, he chose to exclude his children from his will, the children upon his death could file an injunction and say, hey, we're entitled to at least 25%. What the judge would then do was interview the children, come in and bring witnesses and say, if you've been bad children, you're entitled to nothing. But if you've been good children, you're entitled to 25%. They had this kind of cut and dry, this is the way the law works. It was understood by everyone in their power. I mean, they promised some things that most people would look at and say, this is what I need. Powerful for a long time. Conquered in a way that no one wanted to cross them. To see that they offered provision, to see that they offered peace, to see that they offered procedure. They were not just people that lived in a small city. They were people that had this kind of internal identity crisis of which one are we first? Are we Christians or are we Roman citizens? Because everything I see around me, all of the propaganda that I know, all of the signs, all of the songs, all of the art says you're a Roman citizen. They can bring you these things. This is what's most important. But then I have Jesus too, so I'm not really sure which one plays into another. And Paul kind of sits down and he says, listen, it's not about either of those. It's not about Rome. It's only about Jesus, if you only knew. I had a professor when I was at Missouri State, one of my favorite professors, a political science professor. He did a lot of research, and he talked about how you can just send out a poll and how polls don't really help. He had this kind of interesting view on things where you could send out a poll and you could get some flat data back, right? I could send a poll and say, who are you voting for? Get that back, have a little bar graph of who you're voting for, and that's what we have. But he would argue that you could get better results when you add a variable in. So this is what he did most of the time. He would send out, and he did a lot of like political, religious type of polls, but he would send out 500 polls to parishioners, to clergy, to pastors in a certain denomination. And a section of those pastors would get just the poll, and a lot of times it was about like social justice issues. About welfare programs and about abortion, and hey, tell me what you think about these, yay or nay or undecided. And you'd get that baseline, hey, you got nothing. And then he would send them in and say, hey, tell me first what Jesus says about social justice issues. And they would write down, well, this verse and this verse and this verse. And then they would have to go and answer those social justice questions, those social issues. And he'd prime the pump in different ways and prime them to think in a certain way so that when you came to those second set of questions, you had to answer, okay, I was just thinking about how Jesus would answer that, so how would I answer that? And it caused this kind of tension in their hearts to go, okay, which one am I allegiant to first? And I think that while this is what the church of Colossae was dealing with, this is very much what we deal with. That what are you allegiant to? What's your first allegiance? What's your first obedience? I'm going to read the first couple verses in Colossians 1, 3 through 5. He says, we always thank God, the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, when we pray for you. Since we heard of your faith in Christ Jesus and of the love that you have for the saints, because of the hope laid up for you in heaven. First of all, he starts off with just thanking God for them. Paul never writes people and says, man, you guys are awesome. You guys are the stuff. I'm so thankful for you. You guys are great. No, he says, I thank God for you. And he says, I see two signs. I see two pieces of evidence in your life. Those are, since we heard of your faith in Christ. And then he says, for the love that you have for all the saints. Now, those are two things that are often hard to live together. A lot of times we see those separate. Man, it's easy for me to love people. God, I don't get so much. Or on the other side of things, you and God are good, but man, I don't love his people. I don't love the people that, and Paul's saying, hey, I've got evidence of you and God because I see both. It's your relationship with Christ and your relationship with people. But in verse 5 is really where you see the evidence of that. He says, you have those two things because of the hope laid up for you in heaven. And my question tonight, if you don't hear anything else, answer this question to yourself. Where does your hope come from? Where does your hope come from? If everything else left, where would you have hope? I have been to more funerals in the last year than I've ever been in my entire life. From a 75-year-old yesterday to my 1-month-old nephew a year ago, and about 4 or 5 in between. Father Time is undefeated. We might be young adults, 18 to 30 something, you're in the prime of life. It has a clock on it. You don't know how long you're gonna live. What's your hope? Is your hope in making it the best today that it's ever going to be? Because that's not promised. Is your hope in making yourself the best version of yourself? Is your hope in the beautification of yourself? Because at 25, you're probably gonna look as good as you ever look. And for me, it's been downhill since about 14 years old, I think. It's not a good thing. But that's got a clock on it. Give it 20 years. Give it 30 years, give it 40 years, and that beauty that what you once held on to now becomes a sad thing. If you're a 60, 50-year-old woman that man, you're just trying to look 25, nobody wants that person around. Goodness, right? What if it's your finances? Man, if 2008 and 2020 have taught us anything, it's that the markets could go at any time and we're not promised anything. And really, if money's your thing, if beauty's your thing, what are you measuring against? Is it just your neighbor? Is it the people you graduated with? Man, as long as I'm making more than the guy next to me in my cubicle, I'm good. Is it to live for the biggest thing that you possibly can? Because there's somebody that's doing it bigger. Is it to be what the prevailing thought is that, listen, I'm gonna put my hope in just being the best person that I can be. I'm just gonna be a good person. And again, my question would be, against who? Because we've all done stuff that's wrong. You've all done something. I've done something. We've all done things that we're not proud of. What's your hope in? What is it that if it left you, you would just be absolutely 100% devastated? Listen, sitting at a funeral and watching family roll in, watching parents of a young child, watching the daughter of someone who just passed away, you can see who has their hope rooted in heaven and who has their hope rooted in whatever's here. And Paul starts to kind of chip away and to kind of show them and just shine some light on, man, it can't be anything except what's laid up for you in heaven. Where does your hope live? That fortunately right now, we're reading this book called Colossians, and we have the benefit of having history. These were people that would have gone, man, Rome sounds so good. What they're doing is so strong. No one's ever done it like Rome, and they were right. But now we read about Rome in history books. We see Rome and go, man, I can point to you all their problems. I can point to you the ruins that they built, but they're not doing so well anymore. The hope of Rome didn't last. Is your hope in something that will last? Or is your hope in something that 5, 10, 30, 50 years down the line won't be there for you anymore? That we have an opportunity to root our hope in something that's eternal. And that's why we talk about having a full send, that why we full send into what God is doing. Because I couldn't live with myself if I went home and said, hey, you can have everything that you want. You can do everything that the culture is telling you can do, and just sprinkle in a little bit of Jesus. When he says, listen, I think if you just understood, I think if you just had a taste of who I am, if you had a taste of how much I loved you, the Roman Empire would not seem quite as big or as strong as you think it is. Because that Mediterranean Sea that it surrounds, I created it. I laid the floor of that ocean bed. I filled it with water. The things that you build with, I created. The things that you fight against and you struggle to build, I've built things 10,000 times better in the blink of an eye. Why? Because I'm God. And that God is not a God who is distant from you. That God is a God who intimately knows you and wants to have a relationship with you. So I want to ask you, what's your hope in? Do you have a little bit of hope in Jesus and you're trying to fill your life with other things? Or is your full hope in Christ? This is the way Paul starts this letter off. And I'm going to transition into verses 9 and 10 here in just a second. And he starts a petition. And he's asking these believers, these people that consider themselves Christ's followers, a question. And he phrases it this way. He says, "And so, from the day that we heard, we have not ceased to pray for you, asking that you may be filled with knowledge of his will and all spiritual wisdom and understanding." Listen, he says it this way: "So walk in a manner worthy of the Lord, fully pleasing to him, bearing fruit in every good work, increasing in the knowledge of God." I want to take away the mystery on some of those words. When he says knowledge of his will, that's one of those church words that you're like, what's God's will? God's will is God's heart. I want you to have knowledge and understanding of his will. And when he stops and says spiritual wisdom, he's talking about practical know-how from God. God wants you to know what his heart is so that you can make decisions and not wonder, man, is God mad at me? And when he says understanding, the discernment in decision making, to know the heart of God and be able to move forward with what it is that God loves and wants. Here's the thing. I know and love my wife. I know my wife's heart. I know her will. I know that when we go on a date, she does not love the Waffle House like I love the Waffle House. I love the Waffle House so much, I want to make it a Waffle Home. Amen? But I will say this. I will not go to a Waffle House during the daylight. It's a nighttime thing only. So that's just, I don't know what that is. But I know that when I take my wife out on a date, one of the things that's not on the table is the Waffle House, right? She just doesn't like it. So my wife's will, my wife's heart, my wife's decisions are not, man, do you think that Tyler would like to go to the Waffle House tonight? No. She doesn't want to see how many jukebox songs I can get to play Kelly Clarkson for everybody who's in there. That's not what she likes to do. It's what I like to do. The same thing, God wants us to have such a deep and intimate relationship with his word, with his love letter to us, so that we can have spiritual wisdom, so that we can have understanding, so we can know his heart, so that we can make decisions and know that this is God's heart, this is God's will, so that we're not walking around with clipped wings wondering, man, is this gonna make God upset? Is this really what God has for me? That God wants us to live in a way that we can move forward going, I know the heart of God. I know what it is that he wants me to do, so I'm just going to serve. I'm just going to be with his people. I'm going to love the people that God's placed around me, that I can have spiritual wisdom. I can have understanding. You can have that discernment. He says that. So in verse 10, he says, so given that information, walk. And we talked about last week, when Paul says the word walk, oftentimes he's saying live, be, exist, make decisions, walk in a manner worthy of the Lord. That's character that contains Christ. He wants us to live in a way that as we make decisions, that's our first allegiance, to walk in a manner worthy of Christ. I was thinking, I represent this church. When I speak, it goes out on our Facebook, on our Instagram, on our YouTube. I speak on behalf. I carry the banner of our ministry. And if I physically went around downtown and I was carrying a banner that said High Street Church, I better walk in a way that is worthy of that church. I better use my words in a way. I better treat people in a way that my character reflects and responds with what our church believes in. And what he's saying here is that, hey, I want you to walk in a way that is worthy of the person whose banner you carry. And don't hear what I'm not saying. He's not saying, hey, if you learn to live in a way that you can walk worthy of the Lord, man, God loves you so much. He loves you because you're able to do that. No, that's not the order that it works in. We get that backwards. That because our hearts have been changed by him, because we see our brokenness and we hand it over to him and we say, God, I'm yours, everything. He says, okay, now I've made you mine. Now walk worthy of that calling. Fully pleasing to him. And then he says, bearing fruit in every good work and increasing in the knowledge of God. Bearing fruit. I think a lot of times we walk around and we say, why is it that my heart doesn't bear any fruit? Why is it that so-and-so's life, why is it that I see that good things are happening in their life? Well, it's because it's coupled with walking in a manner worthy. That's obedience. We see someone with fruit, and you don't always see the obedience living underneath. Obedience is that soil. Obedience is that watering. Obedience is the sunlight that we go, man, I just see the fruit on the tree. Fruit's an incredible thing. Fruit tastes good, it's sweet, it smells good, it has an aroma, and ultimately, fruit is meant to go out somewhere, and it carries seeds to a spot, right? It dies, seeds go in the ground, and another thing is planted. Man, how incredible, how attractive would it be to have sweetness, aroma, reproduce who you are? And I think a lot of Christians walk around and go, why is it that I don't have those things in my life? But we don't see the obedience that's been watering that tree for such a long time. And Paul's going, man, I want you guys to be such an aroma, such a sweet thing to the people around you. Marry your life with obedience. And you're wondering, what? Obedient to what? Read God's word and do what it says. I was talking to a college student today who's in his last year at school, and I was like, man, what's your thing? What are you doing when you graduate, when you're back home, when you're doing what you, and he was like, honestly, I don't know. He was like, I feel like I just keep saying yes to God, and good things keep happening. It was like, I don't have any advice for you then. Keep doing that. Keep saying yes to God and see what happens. You don't have to know everything. I got my 2-year degree at a community college, and people kept telling me, you'll take a class, you'll find your thing, you'll know what your thing is. All right, I finished community college and went, I kind of liked economics classes. I don't know. So I got an economics degree, and I went, I don't know what I'm going to do with that. I told people I wanted to work at the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, and I wanted to. I thought that would be fun. But I had a year before my wife graduated where I was just working at a bank in town, and I was just like, I got to do something. So I just kept showing up here at the church. I just kept showing up with stuff with Kyle. I just kept doing whatever it is that was asked of me, and some things that weren't. That I think it made it easier for Pastor Eddie that said if I could pay you, then I could actually tell you what to do and tell you to leave sometime. But I just kept saying yes to what God had for me. That some of us need to stop worrying about left and right and just say, God, I'm just going to say yes to the simple things that your word tells me to do. Your word tells me to kill the sin in my life. I'm going to try to kill the sin in my life. Your word tells me to glorify and honor you with my words. I'm going to try to do that. Your word says to be a light to the people around me. I'm going to try to do that. I'm not going to be perfect at it, but I'm going to try. Have you been obedient with what God's called you to today? That will equal fruit and increasing in the knowledge of God. That's attractive to everybody. You're a citizen of heaven, live like it. These people had hope laid up for them in heaven so they could love the people around them and go, this is not my final destination. This is not the spot that ends everything for me. So you know what? If I get mistreated, that's okay. I'll be all right. If I don't have my favorite spot to serve, that's okay. I'll be all right. My hope's laid up in heaven. So here, if I don't get my thing, I'm good. Live like you are a citizen somewhere else. And people will come and say, what is it about you? Live like you're a citizen somewhere else. Colossians 1:12 through 14, it says this. It says they're giving thanks to the Father, who has qualified you to share in the inheritance of the saints in light. I'm just gonna stop there. And I remember reading that a couple of months ago and just getting hung up fully, like could not read anymore on the word qualified. Giving thanks to the Father who has qualified you. That we have a Father in heaven who, man, it is so easy to disqualify anyone and everyone, including yourself. Well, if you would have known what I did in high school, if you would have known the depths of what I've done in college, I would be disqualified. If you know what he did, I would disqualify him. But I don't get to choose who qualifies. The one with the power chooses qualification. I remember watching the Olympics a couple years ago. Rest in peace, Olympics. We were supposed to have that this year. But I remember watching the Olympics, and it was some weird sport like curling. I mean, this is so interesting. And these guys would do something, they're sweeping this stone, and this person would blow a whistle, and I didn't know what was happening. They're like, oh, he got disqualified because he did the thing. The people with the power are the ones who get to qualify and disqualify. That you have a Father in heaven who is fully ready, willing, and able to qualify you to share in the inheritance of the saints in light. When the Bible talks about inheritance, Ephesians 2 says he'll show us the immeasurable riches of his grace and kindness towards us. It's immeasurable, the amount of grace, the amount of forgiveness, the amount of kindness. He's never gonna stop forgiving you. He's never gonna stop showing grace to you. He's never gonna stop showing kindness to you. Because the amount that he loves you, it doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter what disqualified you. He's the Father who gets to choose who gets his inheritance. And that's where your citizenship lies. In heaven, with a place that we could have never worked towards. I found a story. I was going to read it, but I'm just going to tell you there were two brothers that lived in Budapest, and they were homeless. They lived in a cave, and they would sell scrap metal for money. But they had a rich grandmother that they never knew anything about because their parents were so evil and mean to them. Both of their parents had died and they never knew. Their parents had cut ties with them. But when their grandmother died, their names got passed down, and no one knew where this inheritance was supposed to go. And it went to this social worker that dealt with homeless people, and she was holding on to these two names, and she never knew when they were gonna come in town, but when they did, they went from being penniless and living in a cave to having $112 million. And they were quoted as saying, we don't even know what to do with a week's worth of wages, much less $112 million. That's an amount of money that you could live off for the rest of your life, but some people could spend all of it, and it would run out at some point. But we have a Father in heaven who has immeasurable kindness towards us. Eternity is literally, your life ends, and if you know Christ, you spend forever with him. Not just 25 years, not just 50 years, not just 75 years, not just 100 years. We spend forever with him just going, man, I wonder if I could get to the depths of, I wonder if I could reach the bottom of the kindness and the goodness and the grace of God today, and we won't be able to do it. I'll have to try again tomorrow. It doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter what you've brought to the table, that we have a Father in heaven who says, I get to choose who gets my inheritance. I get to choose who gets to be part of my family. And he's willing, ready, and able to bring you in. Do you have a relationship with Jesus? Is your hope in him? Is your hope laid up for you in heaven for all eternity? Or is it something that could be gone tomorrow? Would you bow your heads? If you had to answer no to that question, know that God sees you. He hears you. He knows what you're walking through. We don't have a God who is distant from us. We have a God who knows us intimately and still chooses to love us. He said, if you confess with your mouth and believe in your heart that Jesus is who he said he is, then you'll be a member of his family. That maybe right now, where you, right in your seat, just need to tell God, God, I believe in you. I want to put my hope in you. And just like an inheritance, there's nothing you need to do. That the next verse says, he's delivered us from a domain of darkness and transferred us to the kingdom of his beloved Son, in whom we have redemption in the forgiveness of sins. He's delivered us. He did it. He did the delivering. He transferred us from darkness into a kingdom of his beloved Son. God does this for you. Will you throw yourself at his feet and say, God, I'm yours? Because I want you. I want to hope in something that's greater. That you can do that today. Maybe you're a Christian and you haven't been living, you haven't been walking in a way worthy. And you need to throw yourself at his feet. The path to the cross, the path to repentance for Christians should be well worn down. That when God shows us something that we haven't been doing right, something we've been doing wrong, and it's all God, we just show back up at God's feet and say, God, please forgive me. I love you. I want to live for you. That we have a God who has qualified you to share in the inheritance of the saints of light. He has delivered you from the domain of darkness. He has transferred you into the kingdom of his beloved Son. Will you accept that gift that he's given you? There's no more important thing for you to answer. If that's you today, there's no more important question. Where does your greatest allegiance lie? What do you have your hope in? We would love in just a couple of minutes for you to meet us at First Steps and just talk to someone and say, hey, I want to know more about Jesus. To fill out that connection card that was in your seat and say, I just want more information about Jesus. To get out your phone and text the word prayed, P-R-A-Y-E-D, to 94,000. That doesn't mean you have everything figured out. It just means that you want to know more. You have a question. Let's not waste any more time on things that will crumble and fall. Let's put our hope laid up in heaven. If you're a believer, we're getting ready to sing. Let's thank God for the hope that we have laid up in heaven. To thank God for all that he's done. Would you stand? Would you tell God in this moment what he's done for you? Would you respond to his call for you to walk worthy? Would you respond to him today to say, you've been qualified, not by anything that you've done, but by the goodness and grace of our Heavenly Father? Would you sing with us tonight?
Hey, thanks so much for joining us for church today. If you made any decisions, we would love to hear from you. Text PRAYED to 94,000 and we'd love to celebrate with you. We'll see you next time.